Tonight, I want you to listen with your heart as much as your ears, because there are people hearing these words who feel as though life has backed them into a corner. You have prayed, you have waited, you have hoped, and yet the silence feels heavier than the burden you carry. You may be wondering if God still sees you, if He still cares, if He still has power over the situation that keeps you awake at night. Hear this clearly: the same God who parted the sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who raised the dead, is standing closer to you now than you realize, and He is not finished with your story. There are moments in life when everything familiar seems to fall apart. The job is gone. The relationship is broken. The diagnosis is frightening. The future is uncertain. In those moments, fear whispers lies into your soul. It tells you that you are alone, that this is the end, that nothing will ever change. But fear has never had the final word. God has. And God specializes in stepping into situations that look hopeless and turning them around in ways only He can. Think about the people throughout history who reached the end of their strength just before God revealed His power. A young shepherd faced a giant trained for war, armed with nothing but faith and a stone. A grieving sister stood at the tomb of her brother, convinced that all hope was gone. A man imprisoned unjustly wondered if his dreams had died behind cold stone walls. In every one of those stories, the turning point came not when circumstances improved, but when trust was placed fully in God. Some of you are standing at that very turning point right now. You may not see it yet, but heaven is already in motion. God is working behind the scenes, aligning events, softening hearts, opening doors no one else can open. The delay you are experiencing is not denial. It is preparation. God is shaping you for what is coming, strengthening your faith so that when the breakthrough arrives, you will know without a doubt that it was His hand and not your own. Trusting God does not mean pretending everything is fine. It does not mean ignoring pain or denying reality. Trusting God means choosing to believe His promises even when your feelings argue otherwise. It means standing on truth when emotions shift like sand. It means saying, Lord, I don't understand this, but I know You are good, and I know You are faithful. There is a dangerous lie that says God only works when we have it all together. The truth is just the opposite. God often waits until we reach the end of ourselves so that we can finally rely on Him. When our strength is gone, His strength is revealed. When our wisdom fails, His wisdom shines through. When we surrender control, His power takes over. Some of you have been fighting the same battle for years. You've tried every solution you know. You've sought advice. You've made plans. You've exhausted your options. And now you are tired. That weariness is not a sign of failure. It is an invitation. It is God calling you to lay down the burden you were never meant to carry alone. He is saying, give it to me. Trust me. Let me do what only I can do. God's timing is perfect, even when it feels painfully slow. We want immediate answers, quick fixes, instant relief. But God sees the whole picture. He knows what must happen in you before He changes what is happening around you. Often, the greatest miracle is not the change of circumstances, but the change of heart that happens along the way. Remember this: the darkest hour is often just before dawn. When the night feels longest, the light is closer than you think. God has a habit of arriving right on time, not early, not late, but precisely when His purpose will be fulfilled. And when He moves, He does not do things halfway. He restores, He redeems, He renews. Your past does not disqualify you from God's future. The mistakes you've made, the regrets you carry, the shame that haunts you do not have the power to cancel God's plan. He is a God of second chances, new beginnings, and fresh starts. What looks like a mess to you is raw material in His hands. He can take broken pieces and turn them into something beautiful. Trusting God also means letting go of bitterness and resentment. Holding on to anger will only keep you chained to the past. Forgiveness does not excuse what happened, but it frees your heart to receive what God wants to do next. When you release the pain, you make room for peace. When you surrender the hurt, you open the door to healing. There are people listening who are standing on the edge of giving up. You feel like you've prayed your last prayer and cried your last tear. But hear this, as long as God is alive, hope is alive. As long as God is on the throne, your situation is not beyond repair. He has not abandoned you. He has not forgotten you. He is closer than your next breath. Tonight, choose trust over fear. Choose faith over doubt. Choose hope over despair. Speak words of belief even when your voice trembles. Lift your eyes beyond what you can see and fix them on the one who holds tomorrow. When you trust God, you are not ignoring reality. You are anchoring yourself to a higher truth. God is about to turn your situation around, not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, but because He is faithful to His promises. The same God who carried you through the storm will lead you into calmer waters. The same God who sustained you in the valley will walk with you on the mountaintop. Hold on. Keep believing. Keep trusting. Your story is not over. The chapter you are in right now is not the final one. God is writing something greater than you can imagine. And when the turnaround comes, you will look back and say, only God could have done this. There are moments when life feels like it is spinning out of control, when everything you once depended on suddenly feels uncertain and fragile. The ground beneath your feet shifts, and you begin to wonder how things reach this point. In those moments, fear rises quickly and doubt follows closely behind. The mind starts racing with questions about tomorrow, about provision, about survival, about whether anything will ever feel stable again. Yet even in the middle of that chaos, there is a truth that does not change, a truth that stands firm when everything else feels like it is falling apart. God is still in control. When circumstances shout that you are losing, God is quietly working. Human eyes see only what is immediate, but God sees the full picture. He is not reacting to your crisis. He already knew it was coming. Nothing has surprised Him. Nothing has slipped past His attention, and nothing has the power to override His authority. What feels like disorder to you is still under His command, even when you cannot trace His hand or understand His ways. There are times when God allows situations to unfold beyond your control so that you will finally recognize who truly holds control. As long as you believe you can fix everything yourself, you will struggle to trust Him fully. But when your strength runs out, when your plans fail, when every door you knock on remains closed, that is often the moment God begins to reveal His power. Not to shame you, but to show you that His strength is greater than your limitations. Consider how often God works in ways that contradict human logic. He brings victory through weakness, clarity through confusion, peace through surrender. He allows storms not to destroy you, but to teach you where your anchor truly lies. When the waves rise and the wind howls, it becomes clear very quickly whether your trust is placed in circumstances or in God. Control is an illusion that disappears in the storm, but faith is what keeps you standing. Many people lose hope because they mistake God's silence for absence. Just because He is not moving the way you expect does not mean He is not moving at all. God does some of His greatest work behind the scenes, in places you cannot see, in hearts you cannot touch, in moments you cannot measure. While you are waiting, He is arranging, aligning, and preparing outcomes that will make sense only in hindsight. The feeling of being out of control often produces anxiety, but faith invites peace. Peace does not come from having all the answers. It comes from knowing who holds the answers. When you truly believe that God is in control, you stop striving to carry burdens that were never meant for you. You learn to release what you cannot manage and rest in the one who never grows weary. God's control is not harsh or careless. It is loving and purposeful. He does not rule with cruelty, but with compassion. Even when he allows pain, it is never without meaning. Even when he delays, it is never without intention. His plans are not designed to break you, but to shape you, to refine your faith, to draw you closer to him. When life feels unstable, it is an invitation to deepen your trust. Not shallow belief, not borrowed faith, but a confidence rooted in the character of God. He has been faithful before, and he will be faithful again. He has carried others through impossible situations, and he is fully able to carry you through yours. The same God who held the universe together before you were born is still holding your life in his hands today. Waiting is one of the hardest parts of faith because it forces the heart to confront uncertainty. When answers do not come quickly and prayers seem to echo in silence, the soul begins to wrestle with doubt. Time stretches long, and every day feels heavier than the one before. In those moments, it is easy to believe that delay means rejection, that God has chosen not to act, or that he has forgotten the cry of your heart. But delay in God's hands is never meaningless, and it is never a sign that he has turned away. God works on a timetable that is higher than human understanding. What feels slow to you is often precise in his plan. He sees consequences you cannot see, relationships you cannot predict, and outcomes that must unfold in the right order. If he acted too soon, you might miss the fullness of what he intends to give. If he moved according to your urgency, the result might not carry the depth, stability, or lasting impact that his wisdom desires. In seasons of waiting, God is rarely inactive. While you are watching the clock, he is shaping character. While you are focused on the outcome, he is working on the foundation. Preparation is happening quietly, often painfully, but always purposefully. God understands that what you receive too early can become a burden rather than a blessing. He prepares you not only to receive the answer, but to sustain it. Waiting also reveals what truly lives in the heart. It exposes impatience, fear, pride, and self-reliance, not to condemn you, but to refine you. In the waiting, God gently removes what would later damage you. He teaches trust that does not depend on immediate results. He strengthens faith that can stand even when circumstances remain unchanged. Many people look back on their lives' and realize that the most important growth happened during the delays. The prayers that were not answered quickly produced humility. The closed doors developed discernment. The prolonged struggles deepened compassion. What once felt like wasted time became the very season that prepared them for what followed. Delay also protects you from harm you cannot see. God may be shielding you from relationships that would have led you away from him, from opportunities that would have weakened your faith, from shortcuts that would have cost you peace. What feels like God withholding may actually be God guarding your future with care and wisdom. Trust grows strongest when it is tested. If everything came easily, faith would remain shallow. Waiting stretches trust beyond comfort, forcing you to lean fully on God rather than circumstances. It teaches you to believe not because things are going well, but because God is good. That kind of faith cannot be shaken by delay. In the waiting, God invites you in a deeper relationship. He draws you closer, not through answers, but through presence. He reminds you that knowing him is more valuable than receiving what you ask for. When the outcome becomes secondary to intimacy with God, the waiting loses its power to discourage. Delay is not denial, it is development. God is preparing both you and what is coming to meet at the right moment. When the answer arrives, it will not come prematurely or carelessly. It will come complete, strengthened by the waiting, aligned with God's purpose, and ready to last in ways that rushed blessings never could. There comes a point in every journey of faith when trusting God requires more than words and more than belief in theory. It demands surrender, not partial surrender, Not conditional obedience, but a complete release of fear, control, and the need to understand everything. This is often the hardest step because the human heart wants certainty, wants assurance, wants to see the outcome before letting go. Yet faith was never designed to operate by sight. It was designed to rest in the character of God. Fear is the first thing that must be surrendered. Fear convinces the mind that the worst possible outcome is inevitable. It magnifies problems and minimizes God's power. When fear takes hold, it creates urgency that pushes people into decisions driven by panic rather than trust. Surrendering fear does not mean pretending it does not exist. It means choosing not to let it rule. It means acknowledging fear, but placing it under the authority of God, believing that His strength is greater than what threatens you. Control is often disguised as responsibility. People tell themselves they must manage every detail, anticipate every problem, and secure every outcome. But control quickly becomes a burden that exhausts the soul. The truth is that control was never meant to belong to you. When you try to carry it, anxiety follows closely behind. Surrendering control is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is recognizing that God can accomplish more through your release than through your constant striving. Understanding is another thing the heart clings to tightly. The desire to know why, when, and how can become an obstacle to trust. Many refuse to move forward in faith until every question is answered. But God rarely explains Himself fully in advance. He asks for trust first, and understanding often comes later. Surrender means accepting that some answers will come only with time, and some may never come at all. True trust is built when you choose obedience, even when clarity is absent. It is saying yes to God while the path ahead remains unclear. It is walking forward one step at a time, guided not by logic alone, but by confidence in who God is. Faith grows strongest in moments when obedience feels risky but necessary. Surrender also involves releasing outcomes. Many people trust God only as long as He produces the result they want. When the answer looks different, disappointment turns into doubt. True trust says that God is good regardless of the outcome. It believes that even if circumstances do not unfold as hoped, God's purpose is still at work. That kind of trust anchors the soul when expectations are challenged. Letting go creates space for peace. As long as you hold tightly to fear and control, peace remains distant. When you surrender, peace begins to settle in. Not because everything has changed, but because your heart has shifted. You begin to rest in God rather than in results. You learn that security is found not in knowing what will happen, but in knowing who walks with you. Surrender is not a one-time decision, it is a daily posture. Each day brings new reasons to worry and new opportunities to trust. Each day invites you to place your concerns back into God's hands. Over time, surrender reshapes the heart, teaching it to rely less on itself and more on God. What once felt frightening slowly becomes freeing as trust replaces fear and peace takes the place of striving. There is a mystery in the way God chooses to reveal His power, because He rarely does it through human strength. Again and again, He waits until strength is exhausted, until confidence fades, until the heart admits it cannot go any further on its own. Weakness is often seen as something to hide or overcome, but in God's design, weakness becomes the very place where His power is made visible. When human ability reaches its limit, divine strength begins its work. People spend much of their lives trying to appear strong. They hide their struggles, mask their fears, and carry burdens in silence. Strength becomes a shield, but it also becomes a barrier. As long as you believe you can manage everything yourself, there is little room for God to move. Weakness removes that barrier. It strips away self-reliance and creates space for dependence on God. God does not shame weakness. He meets it with grace. He is not drawn to polished appearances, but to honest hearts. When you come to Him without pretense, admitting that you are tired, confused, and overwhelmed, you are not pushing him away, you are inviting him closer. God responds to humility, and humility often grows in the soil of weakness. Weakness teaches you where your true source of strength lies. It exposes the limits of human effort and redirects the heart toward God. When you can no longer rely on your own understanding or resources, you begin to rely on his wisdom and provision. This shift is not comfortable, but it is necessary. It changes the way you pray, the way you hope, and the way you trust. In moments of weakness, God's power is not loud or dramatic. It is steady and sustaining. He gives endurance when you feel like giving up. He gives peace when answers are still unclear. He gives courage to take one more step when you feel like collapsing. His strength does not always remove the struggle, but it enables you to stand within it. Many testimonies are born in weakness. Stories of transformation often begin with words like broken, lost, or defeated. These are not signs of failure. They are points of encounter. God uses the very places where you feel inadequate to reveal his sufficiency. What you see as a liability, God sees as an opening. Weakness also deepens compassion. When you have known pain, you recognize it in others. When you have struggled, you become gentler with those who struggle. God uses weakness not only to shape you, but to equip you to serve others with empathy rather than judgment. Strength that has never been tested often lacks understanding, but strength born from weakness carries grace. The power of God is most clearly seen when the outcome cannot be credited to human ability. When success comes despite limitations. When peace exists despite pressure. When hope remains despite loss, it becomes evident that something greater is at work. God's strength shines brightest when it is not competing with human pride. Weakness invites trust. It teaches you to lean rather than resist, to receive rather than strive. Over time, what once felt like a curse becomes a gift because it keeps you dependent on God. In that dependence, his power flows freely, not constrained by self-sufficiency, but welcomed by surrender, transforming weakness into a testimony of grace and strength. There comes a moment when everything you have heard, believed, and hoped for must settle deep within your heart. This is the moment where faith becomes personal, where truth moves beyond words and takes root in the soul. God's promises are not distant or abstract. They are alive and active, meant to be trusted in the middle of real struggles and unanswered questions. What he has spoken over your life has not changed, even if your circumstances have. Trusting God is not about feeling strong. It is about choosing faith when strength is gone. It is about standing still when fear urges you to run and waiting when impatience demands action. God is not asking you to understand every detail of your journey. He is asking you to trust him with it. The same God who guided you through past trials is still guiding you now, even if the path ahead feels uncertain. Your situation is not permanent. Pain has a season, and struggle has an expiration date in God's timing. What feels endless to you is measured by him. He sees the moment when the burden will lift, when clarity will come, when joy will return. Until that moment arrives, he offers his presence as your greatest assurance. You are not walking alone, even when it feels that way. God's faithfulness does not depend on your perfection. He works through imperfect people who simply choose to believe him. Every time you take a step of trust, even a trembling one, you are aligning your heart with his purpose. Faith grows not in comfort, but in obedience. Each act of trust strengthens the foundation on which your hope stands. Let go of the belief that your weakness disqualifies you. God is not limited by what you lack. He is not hindered by your past, your doubts, or your failures. He is drawn to hearts that are willing, honest, and open. When you surrender what you cannot control, you make room for God to do what only he can do. There is meaning even in the waiting. God uses silence to teach listening, uses delay to teach patience. and uses uncertainty to teach dependence. Nothing you are experiencing is wasted. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of endurance is seen by God and held with care. He is shaping something within you that will last far beyond the struggle you are facing now. Choose to trust God today, not because everything makes sense, but because He is trustworthy. Place your hope not in outcomes, but in His unchanging character. When fear speaks loudly, let faith speak louder. When doubt creeps in, remind your heart of what God has already brought you through. The story of your life is still unfolding. The chapter you are in now is not the conclusion. God is still writing, still working, still moving on your behalf. As you continue to trust Him, even in uncertainty, you will one day look back and see that He was faithful every step of the way, turning what seemed impossible into a testimony of His grace and power.